Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective and we ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about tomorrow. I do the show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of what is a somewhat snowy Rocky Mountains tonight. Folks, I come onto the show, I say, we look at it from a neoclassical perspective to see what it tells us about tomorrow. Well, all it ever tells us is that it's going to go higher. And unfortunately, tonight really is no exception. If we look at the ending numbers, we're starting to see the laggards move. We saw it all across the board today. We saw a buyback announcement by IBM. IBM jumps $4. They got crushed on earnings, if you remember. So what do? That's how they make their money now. They buy their own stock so that they can raise the ratios through manipulation of, buying your stock and retiring it. Dow Jones, 111 higher, 111 and a half, 15,680 going for the highs. S&P's over the highs and keeps rising, 9.8, almost 10, 1772, that target that was out there on that larger ABCD structure, 183. Excuse me, not 183, 1783. Composite up 12. Composite lagged all day. NDX as well because of Apple. Apple reported earnings last night. And they started to sell off today. They couldn't hold it. And they started to give it up, especially at the end of the day. But the rest of the market just looked over at Apple and kind of shrugged and went on about its business. It doesn't even care anymore. 39.52 is the close, 12.2 higher. And the NDX, 9 points higher. The laggard today, 33.91 and 3/4. The Russell slightly beats the NDX. It was down most of the day. Closes 3 higher, 1121.07. That's a new all-time high, closing high. Actually, a new all-time high tonight as well. So we've got new highs everywhere except for the industrials, and they're almost there. We had gold sell off a little bit today, down about, it was down heavier earlier in the day, ended up down about 12, I believe. After hours, looks like it's down a couple. Oil sold off after hours, down 50 cents right now. It was down about $0.75. We had the dollar up 0.3 today. It got a little bit of a juice on the way back up, got into the bar. We'll look at it. And that was some of the pressure that came in on the gold because typically they go opposite of each other. Let's go to the indexes and see what we got here. And see if there's anything that tells us anything's going to change. And right now there isn't. Straight up. No volume, right? Or volume's light as we're going up. And actually had a little bit more volume today, it turned out. It's spiking on up there. And if we pull this out farther to look at that weekly too, remember this is the ABCD structure from here, B point there, back down to here, and then a C point up, a C here, and going for the D, and it's stretching for it, but it looks like it's going to get there. 1183. 11. I keep wanting to say 11. 1783. The Dow seems to be the number now, right? Now we're moving all the money into where? We're moving it into the XLP we saw last night. We're moving it also into lagging Dow stocks because they were the ones that are trailing. So you go find quote unquote the cheap stuff and you throw your money at it. Top of this guy is 15,709.58. We got up to 15,680. So we're within like 30 points. Going to tag it tomorrow, almost certain. Isn't going to have the volume. I just don't see the volume on a Friday. Just not going to happen. Maybe they'll surprise me, but I don't think so. So you're going to go up there, you're going to tag it. We'll see if it gets over it, stays over it or not. It's the only one that hasn't been able to. If we pull it over, remember the XLP kind of looked like this to where it was doing a 6-month consolidation. That's what the Dow's been doing since May. 6-month consolidation, getting ready to try to break over the highs. The only index that hasn't done it yet. The broad composite. Okay, so this guy cannot get back over the highs. Now, you can view this multiple ways. You got 8 days of kind of consolidation, if you will, right after this gap up. So you gap up, you stretch, you come back down, you stretch again, and now you're going sideways. This thing has 4 dojis and 6 bars. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. It's worn out, but it doesn't want to give it up. And actually, it's not that it doesn't want to give it up. The rest of the market doesn't want to give it up. No volume today, can't get to the high. It actually wants to tag the high. Remember, the high had volume, 39.61.10. You got up to 39.57. We'll see if it can get up there and tag it tomorrow. And the NDX looks exactly the same almost, except for today it went and tagged it. So the NDX gets onto the top 3,400, gets over it 30. Oh, it did not. I'm sorry. I thought it did. So just slightly less. 3,400.04. We got the 39.99.09. So we're a point away. Of course, we pulled back a little bit, closed at 91. After hours, we had Baidu, we had BLD, what was it? BLWD, the chicken place, I can't remember the name, Buffalo Wings, Wild Wings. They were kind of juicing things. On the opposite side, there were some blow-ups again, as there has been each night. But you know, the larger ones like Baidu were pointing to the top side, not the downside. We also had LinkedIn, and LinkedIn I think sold off by the end of the night. So wants the tag. Composite wants the tag. Dow Jones wants the test. S&P just keeps running and trying to fulfill an ABCD target on the weekly. And then there's the Russell. Now the Russell all day long was trailing, was trading down, and then they jammed it at the end of the day, and it actually closes over the highs. That high was 1121.53. We closed at 1121.96, 40 cents above it. New close, new highs. This thing can go higher, right? I mean, you've got the new high, so you can't say it can't, because it can, because it, you know. But I mean, we're talking pennies, so you know the jury's out on this. We'll have to see, and especially with all the others getting ready to tag the highs. So we'll see how it plays out. The Russell certainly isn't the leader right now. It's more of the laggard as the money rotates elsewhere. If we go over, I want to quickly look at, I'm probably not going to spend much time, but I want to flip through these sectors just to see what they look like. So we'll flip through them, because last night there was about 4 of them that wanted to try to pull back. They couldn't do it. And what do we got here? 126.24. That's a 85, slightly higher volume. You can't even get a 2-bar reversal, huh? So that still can go higher again. The semiconductors, I'm not sure where the juice was coming from today, but this thing was juicing. This one wants to go back and test the highs. It's filling the gap. So it filled the gap today, had strength all day long, gapped up today and just kept running, and got stronger and stronger as the day went on. I'm sure part of that's Intel, but there's got to be more than Intel. XLB hanging at the highs. And that's still, you know, it's done a retest regen already and still hanging. And the retest regen was clean. So that can continue to hang or potentially go higher. XLE, now this one had gapped down. So the XLE is coming all the way back up to test that high volume high. Top of is 87.59. You're at 87.28 on the close. You got as high as 87.34. I would expect it's going to tag it tomorrow. Let's see if the XLF is close enough to tag again. And now see, this one's really lagging again. Now remember, if we go back, this is interesting because I thought this one got closer today. If we go back, this was the only one that couldn't make the highs when others were. Remember, he came up here to test them and couldn't, fell back. Now it's still got, you know, a series of higher lows here. I mean, you know, you got swing point highs that you're trying to break above, but it's definitely the laggard comparatively when we look at it from that perspective. And so when I'm sitting here look at this price point, I mean, you know, the high is here. You got it right across there, right? and it's right at it on that swing point high, trying to close that gap area that's there. Can't quite do it, but it looks like it's going to try tomorrow. I don't think it quite closed at 20.88. It just did. It got to 89. So you close the gap. The volume is not much up there, but it's even more than what you're doing. This one is definitely the laggard still. XLI, I believe this one was trying to turn. Yeah, it was a 2-bar reversal last night. Forget that. Back up at the highs. XLK, this one was powering up today again. New highs. Can go higher. XLP broke out yesterday on huge volume and got a continuation move today. That one is a breakout on multiple time frames. The XLU is the only one that really isn't at the highs yet, and even though it's not going to be at the highs anytime soon, it's getting pulled right along with everything else, and that doesn't look very clean. Looks like it could come back, but then you go to the others. XLV breaks out farther out of this consolidation, 6 days, and the XLY is the last one here. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, this also was trying to pull back and couldn't. Right, came back, tested with a little heavier volume, tested again this morning, then just turned around and ran. So I don't see any weakness anywhere. XLF, if anything. Everything else is powering up. So indexes at highs, sectors at highs. Ox markets. Let me look at the... First I want to see what the dollar did. So let's look at the dollar first. Because the dollar was trying to come back up. Okay, so it's not there yet. The dollar was trying to come back up and test onto this swing point low, right? And so this low, that was the test, and it got right into it. 2147 got right to it. Volume 1.7, and it's only 1.3 there. No, excuse me, 1.17, 1.3. So there's a little heavier volume. So you come into it, you don't have the volume. So tomorrow it's going to hit it again because it's enough volume to hit it again. It's going to try to break over that line, and if it can't, then the dollar's going to pull back and it's going to come back down. That's going to be a retest, regen on the way back down. Yeah, and on the weekly, remember on the weekly we'd already broke swing point lows. So that to me looks, at least so far, as if it's going to fail. Let me look at the FXE. Oh, that's interesting. So this one's coming off with volume. You know, we got the Fed tomorrow, and nobody on this planet thinks that the Fed's going to tighten. I think 99% of the people don't think it will even talk about tapering anymore. I expect that it actually will say something about tapering. If you ever wanted to line the risk up on one side, the risk has to be to the downside off the Fed, right? Just for the fact that what else can they offer? I mean, the only thing I think they could offer is that, you know, they come out and tell us flat out they're not gonna pull back on QE for another 2 years or something, right? I mean, I just don't see that happening, because right now everybody in the world expects QE to continue, no tapering until way out in 14 somewhere, and you know, it's fun and games, and so the risk is there. So if there's any hint of tapering, the dollar is going to shoot up and this thing's going to come back. And that's probably going to put pressure on gold if it does it. So let's go look at gold. Gold was down, it gapped down this morning, and stayed down with no volume. So it's just a little minor pullback so far. Tomorrow will be the story on this one. Let's see if silver looks any different. Not really. So, and actually, if you look around, and this was interesting today, it wasn't just the euro. You were getting big sell-offs in currencies beyond the euro, right? That was the British pound. Here's the Japanese yen. Of course, that one's always going down. It seems like. If we look at the Swiss franc coming down, the Aussie got hit today, I believe, pretty hard. Yeah, all of them. Right. The dollar was getting it from all sides, and the FXE is the only one that didn't pull back that much, which is why the dollar didn't push up that far. But you know, if you had to try to read that one day's action, that sure says that the Fed's going to say something about tapering. At least that's the way people are trading it. Let's look at the USO one time, and then I'm going to go to some questions that were emailed to me. And remember, you can email me, you can text me. Yeah, this this looks like it's going to try to come back. You know, it could get up to a retest regen, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be able to yet. And the bonds, let's look at those guys. The bonds flipped around, I believe, today. Yeah, they did. So you got to pull back into the retest. That top was 107.63. You got right into it, 107.51. No volume. Back the other way. So this also is saying, you know, if this goes up, interest rates are coming down. So this is the Fed's going to just keep easing. So you've got some mixed pictures. You got people scared. Well, the dollar's been so beaten up. That's just people short covering, right? I mean, that's what's happening there. They're moving out of the other currencies and flattening out in front of the Fed. But these things are saying the Fed's going to keep easing. Okay, let's look at some of the questions that were sent. And let me pop over here. So Mr. Barnes asked, last night you said gold should pull back farther. Yeah, I did. And it did. Not big, but yes, it did. And then the question was, it reversed off the lows of swing point high 912 2 days ago. Oh, yeah, from over here. Yeah, 919. I can't read. There we go. So 131.22. It got up to 131.44. So it went into that bar. Didn't have the volume, right? Reversed off of it. It was also really testing this bar as well, because that's where the resistance zone is. And so the question really here is, it bounced up from 129.57 today so far. So it was bouncing a little bit, but it didn't close there. It closed near the lows. So I'm not sure if that was it for the pullback. But he's interested in GDX. So let me type in some of these things that he's interested in. GDX, GOLD, and those are the ones. So let's see what these look like. So GDX is the large cap gold stocks. Okay, so the big consolidation underneath it, the big anchor zone now is the bottom of this bar, 25.47. This one doesn't show great behavior on the way up, but it's good. I mean, your power moves up are on some decent volume. So it's coming back in. You know, it's more important, let me pull this over, it's more important that you see it on the weekly, because you already made one big move, you came all the way back to test it, now you're starting back up, and on the daily you can see how it's trying to curl back under and test again. And what it's coming back into is this huge bar. And that bar is going to be more problems on the top than it is on the bottom. The top of that one is 28.64, which is up in this area, and this looks like it's setting up some sort of an ABCD structure, or trying to, right? You had an A point here, your B point was there, your C was here, you got over it, now you're retesting into it. If this can turn and run, it can run up close to that. So GLD doesn't look bad, so the real question is on GDX doesn't look bad. The other question is on gold, and this is one of the large cap stocks inside that index. It pushed up yesterday. It was actually interesting. It pushed up to 79.77, popped into almost the top of this 79.94, and then this one was 79.23. That little zone, it went up into it, failed, right, came back down, closes underneath it today. Now what it's doing is it's coming back into this bar. It's got less volume. The top of that one is 75.83. But you've also got these bars now. They're going to give it support. You can see the support zone here. It almost got to it. You've got the one over here anchoring it as well. That, to me, is, if you're willing to take a position, this is a spot to start nibbling at it. So GOLD, pullback, yeah, that's where you should probably nibble. So I like this. I like it better than the GDX. The one that looks better than the GDX is the small caps, the GDXJ. Now they're a little bit more risky, but if you look at those guys, the behavior is better. I mean, they're showing more gusto as they come up, so to speak, right? So you pull back today, you pull right back into the bottom of this bar, 39.26 to the penny, 39.26. You're coming right back into it, right above support. Support's right into that gap. That looks pretty clean. Now, of course, if these are going to take off, the large caps will probably too. But I like the way these are showing a little bit better in terms of their characteristics. But then again, if you look at this, that big bar resistance is above, not below. You know, whereas on the others, on the GDX, it's actually supporting. So these have been weaker coming off, but now they're starting to show something on the way up. And maybe that's just because everybody wants to run into everything that can move the farthest, because it seems like performance is the whole story right now. Okay. A couple questions here on the boards. Let me see what these are. So AKAM, Acme, and RYN, Ryan Air, I believe. So let's start with I don't know how to pronounce it, AKAMI or whatever it is. It's the network. Wow, this one just got blown away, didn't it? Okay, so I assume you want to buy these. So the things that when I look at this, the things that really stand out is this area right here, right? This zone, and then the one below it right here, right? Those two areas. So that area looks pretty strong. Now I don't know that it's going to get that deep. The top of this bar is 43.68. You got a bunch of swing point lows here. You came down with heavy volume testing them. You actually broke under them. So you broke under one here, you broke under another one there, then you broke under all of them there, or at least one more. You broke under this one, and you still have two more to go. So when I look at that and I look at this bounce, I think you bounce back to the top of this area up in here, maybe to that swing point low, and then you probably give it all up and you come back and test again. And on that next test, I think there's a good chance that you break these two, which also will break this one. If it's not broken, you know, this week, that will set up multiple time frame breaks, which will probably push you right up into the top of this bar at least. So if you want to buy it, I'd be patient and wait for the top of this area. And then that really is just a trade still, because even if this is going to go up long term, it's probably going to take a while to work back up there, given the damage off this top. You never want to see it do this. But, you know, this thing can work sideways. You know, if the market stays bullish, this thing over time can work sideways and work its way back up again. I've seen them close these big gaps too many times to think it won't, especially in a market like this one. Ryanair is the next one. Let's see what Ryan looks like. Oh man, you're going, or Ryanair. I thought it was Ryanair. Maybe it's Ryanair. Anyway, the airline totally smoked. Breaks 4 swing point lows. 5, excuse me. Multiple time frames. That's decimation. I have to pull the monthly up to see what's going on. One of the reasons I probably don't trade airlines, because these things can kill you. Well, I don't, last time you had volume was over here, right? Last time you have any kind of real structure, you got a wide price spread bar here is about it. And other than that, and you can see it from these zones, right? The zones pick out the strongest stuff, and they actually are geared to try to get closer and closer to current price. So this stuff is so weak that it can't find anything. It has to put it back so far. In other words, there's no real support until you get back to here. That's what the zones are telling you. 27.33, you're trading at 46 still. I wouldn't even get close to this thing. That just looks like a disaster. So, not something I would play with. The other one, you can trade it once it comes back, but not here. I wouldn't touch this. I never touch multiple swing point breaks. If anything, I let it bounce and I short it. So, Tommy says, it would seem that the move in the currencies today, that there's a real fear that the Fed is going to do something surprising, which causes the dollar to go higher. Then wouldn't that kill gold? Yeah, it will probably hurt gold. If the dollar really spikes, if the Fed really comes out and says they're going to tighten, yeah, the dollar would go to the moon, and gold would get slammed. That would be the normal reaction. I don't think they're going to come out and tell you they're going to tighten. I suspect what you might see, though, is you might see them come out and say, that tightening, not tightening, but that tapering is what they call it. That tapering is still on the table, and that, according to the economic circumstances, that, they'll decide when to do it. More than likely, what that's going to do is put a little bit of a bid under the dollar, and it's probably not even going to matter to gold. And as far as the markets are just looking for an excuse to sell off at some point. Right now, there are no sellers, and there won't be until there are. And when there are, then there will be a bunch of them. And you'll get a fast move down, given the way this thing's stretching now. You'll get a fast move down, right? It kind of come out of nowhere, probably gaps down one morning, and then some buyers buy and get trapped, and then you really get some pressure, right? That's the way those usually set up. But on the flip side of that, the ones that are going to get hurt is, if this market really is putting in a top, would be, because it's kind of getting parabolic now. So, when you start going parabolic, you get some sort of a blow-off move potentially, and then that sets up a huge range at best, or maybe the tops. And so we'll see how it sets up. But, I wrote an article today, and maybe this will describe my feelings better. If you come over here, if you want tonight, if you have a little time to read, just pop in here. Oil and gold, trades while you wait, right? There's some trades over here that can be made that are possible, right? I mean, at least these are trading. When I look at the market's not trading. It's just working higher and higher and higher. And you can't, if you want to trade, that's not something you can trade unless you just get long and stay long, right? When this market just works straight up like it's doing right now, there's not a lot you can do, right? If you're long, you stay long, and you slowly take pieces off. If you're not in, well, then you sit there and cringe every day as it goes up. And that's the way that works. That's not a trading market. You can't trade that. You just stay with it, right? That's an investor's market. It just goes up forever. Long and strong, right? Okay, so let's see here. Tomorrow's the Fed day. That will be the big news. I don't think, other than Facebook, you got Facebook after hours, but Facebook's not a big enough story to really take the market down. It can take social media down, but that's not a big enough piece yet. Can hurt sentiment, but I think the big story tomorrow is going to be the Fed and what the Fed says, if they say anything, and what happens as a result of it, the reaction. And it certainly looks to me like we're going to spike up there and test everything. We'll probably test it before the Fed, would be my take. All right, folks, have yourself a great night. I will catch you next time. Good night, folks.